What's going on, 3DMJers? This is Eric Helms. I'm at the JPS Fitness hosted Ultimate Evidence-Based Conference, and this is the, I think, episode 8 of Anecdotes and Observations. That's AO pronounced AO. I think you did a lot better than Omar Yusuf. That's great.
Got one on you, Omar.
So if you don't know who Jacob Schepis is, he is a gym owner here in Melbourne. He is making a lot of fantastic content online. He's got a lot of practical experience. How long have you been coaching?
Since I was 19, so...
Like a year?
Yeah, a year. I'm only 18, so...
That's right.
Nah, almost 8 years now.
That's awesome. And how long have you owned JPS Fitness?
Since I started, the company was developed.
Yeah.
But I had a personal training background at a commercial gym first, so I was there for 2 years. So when I was 21, so 6 years now, I've had a facility where I coach and have other coaches train people, yeah.
And you're an athlete yourself?
I try to be. Mediocre athlete, hopefully better coach. Yeah, a little bit of powerlifting, bodybuilding first.
Right.
It's my one true love, and then obviously the powerlifting was an extension of that.
Sure.
In the off season, yeah.
And you've had a podcast now where I've really enjoyed having discussions with you and the various other experts you have on. And one thing I think is really impressive about you is that you've very much embraced evidence-based practice in a holistic way, including all three sides of it. That's your own experience, the personal preference of the client, as well as the science. We're going to be specifically talking about some of the more anecdotal knowledge, the stuff that's not coming from PubMed. So if you have found something in your practice that is consistently effective, that is not necessarily supported by literature, or just really can't be supported by literature, what I would like to hear is what is that, and how much has it impacted your practice? And if you could share that with the listeners and see if they can glean any information from it that'll help them.
Yeah, awesome. I think to start, I came into the industry very much unaware of how multifaceted and just how much information and knowledge you need as a coach to be able to get effective results with your clients. And I was quite dogmatic at the start, knew very little. It was, clean eating, train to failure every set. But I soon fell into science, and I think one of the mistakes I made in falling into the science was trying to be a scientist.
Sure.
And reading research and being able to cite various papers and textbooks, and it really didn't help my practice at all initially, because at the end of the day, we're working with a single client and N equals 1. So to start, the most effective thing I do now as a coach is learn how to screen my clients before I start working with them.
Okay.
And the interpersonal skills that you need to be able to communicate with them, to be able to get the information that you need to then use the science as a starting point. So I think, coaches who are in the evidence-based practice, field or community, look to the science. And yes, they look to their experience, but they often forget the client side of things and don't properly understand just how beneficial it is to be able to use, verbal and non-verbal communication to understand somebody's values,
right,
their beliefs, their attitudes, because we know how much of a role that plays in behavior, which influences, their goal attainment. So I think starting there and being able to screen your clients, not just on a physical level, such as like using an overhead squat or, joint isolated screening assessments, but to, assess them as a person, all those things related to them psychologically, as well as, their confidence in the gym, whether or not they have the knowledge to be able to track calories and macros. So we have screening tools now that we use at JPS where we assess somebody's education. So their training IQ. Do you know what reps and sets means? Do you know what RP is? Like asking basic questions like this can help you better understand the client, where they are, and how best to apply what we know through science. And that's been a huge game changer for me over the years, is focusing less on how much can I learn from science and more on how much can I learn about this client. And that's been extremely valuable. And then stemming from that, once you have that base of understanding of the person you're working with, having models or systems to teach nutrition and teach training. I think, as we know, success is very much, correlated with self-determination theory. So how confident someone can be, their self-efficacy and, their autonomy.
Yeah.
So I think we need to be able to teach people the skills and the knowledge necessary so that they can, assume control over their training, their diet, to be able to achieve their goals. And I very much see a lot of utility in having systems to do that, because although we want to treat the individuals as individuals, we do need a model of teaching that we can apply in a very time-efficient manner, because as personal trainers, if we're on the gym floor, we're working online, time is of the essence, and we need to have the streamlined process to be able to do that. Some of the systems that I guess I've created have been very much based on, my experience in working with other coaches, seeing what they do, so they're not mine, entirely, such as your, system for teaching a flexible diet. That 4-phase approach, to incrementally, implement a flexible approach to nutrition. But having templates is a huge way that you can do that.
Right.
So we have templates that are modified based on somebody's level of advancement with their training and their diet. So we have beginner templates where they learn what foods have what macros.
Right.
There's no talk about, you need to eat X amount of grams of protein per day, you need to hit your fiber. It's just, these are proteins, these are carbs, these are fats, have 3 to 5 meals based on your preference, and we obviously adjust that. When you like to eat, we work around those confines. And then we have an intermediate template where it's cool, now we're going to assess your body weight once a week. You're going to start checking in. You're going to start tracking your calories and your protein. Then we have our advanced template where clients are tracking their weight daily. They're tracking their steps. So there's this incremental increase in the complexity at which we apply nutrition. And we have the same for training. So with our beginners, we don't talk about RPE.
Right.
We get them on a program. It's cool. This is the exercise. Do you know how to perform this correctly? Do you have good technique? Can you understand rest, sets, repetitions, load, tempo, these kind of things, and just be able to consistently train.
Yeah.
And then once they can prove to me after a period of 4 to 8 weeks that they've followed the program and they've ticked off all their sessions and they've filled it out, it's cool, you're ready for the next template, which is now we're going to track your reps, sets, and loads for every set. And we're going to start using RPE scale.
Sure.
And then obviously the advanced template, we start measuring things like number of working sets per week. We look at things like volume load, intensity. We start assessing with a little more of a critical eye what's happening. So I think that has been highly useful in my ability to coach. And it's been really effective because no longer am I using this one template and having to sort of say, oh, well, don't worry about RPE, we'll get to that later, and, confusing people.
Yeah.
It's been able to streamline things really well. And I guess when it comes to the nutrition side of things, something that I've used, and I spoke to you a little bit about this, and also with Dr. Mike Israetel, is the application of reverse dieting outside of contest prep. I've seen this work extremely well. A little bit unconventional. I sort of stumbled upon it just with my clients who were coming out of a deficit, and I didn't really know what to do with them. It's oh, we'll bring you to maintenance, but it's the light would switch off, and everybody struggles with maintaining weight, and gaining weight for most people is even more difficult to do so at the right rate. So what I've used with reverse dieting is when people go into a fat loss phase, it might be 12 weeks. The first 6 to 8 weeks, it's a pretty aggressive diet. You get the motivation from the consistent results, you get the buy-in because they trust you, and then start to increase their calories so that when they come out of it, not only are they less likely to binge because energy availability starts increasing, the size of the deficit gets smaller, but they look better, they start training better, and it teaches them the importance of eating various calorie intakes.
Right.
As opposed to what many people perceive to be dieting. It's well, I have to have that one.
Just drop it right down.
Just drop it right down and keep dropping it. It teaches, variation in calorie intake, which I think is extremely important, and they're beneficial for subsequent phases where they have to either maintain their new weight, gain weight, and so forth. So that'll be something that I've used on the nutrition side of things pretty effectively. When it comes to training, obviously I listen to a lot of what you and various other people in the field talk about, such as Greg Knuckles and guys like that. But I don't really apply daily undulating periodization to my physique athletes. I much prefer the Hatfield Method, whereby in a single session somebody might work within a range of 6 to 20 reps. And it flows. I think there's something to be said for a session just flowing. When you do some heavy work at the start and then you start working up to those higher rep ranges, it feels really good. And it allows me to transition, especially those bros who come from a place of just training with really high reps. I can teach them how to train at lower repetitions within a session, but not do such little volume that they feel it's pointless. So I find that that's a really good tool to teach people how to work with various rep and loading zones. And obviously that's another discussion, in talking about hypertrophy of different fiber types. I know that you and Brian Miner have spoken about that quite a bit. We're still pretty unsure as to where we're going with that, I think, at this stage.
But I think even with if you leave fiber types alone, there's a lot of value in simply matching up specific exercises with certain rep ranges.
100%. They're self-selecting.
Yeah, if anyone's been in the gym, if anyone's been in the gym for more than 6 months, they know that your 20 rep sets don't match well with RDLs or squats. But on something like a leg extension or a leg press, that might have a good place. There's the research we have now backs up that anecdotal kind of model that you have, and it just kind of flows nicely, is that it doesn't really matter how you create the variation in your hypertrophy phase, so long as it has some kind of logical order. You can do it across the week. You can do it week to week, or you can even do it within session. So I think that doesn't surprise me at all. That's something I think a lot of bodybuilders have found that. And
just an extension of that is with my physique athletes now, and it's been quite successful, even with my own training, is just setting up a microcycle, ticking the boxes of volume, intensity, frequency, and then having a progression model, which is dependent on the exercise. And I actually created my own little system with my athletes, unless someone else has used it and I just haven't forgotten that I stole it and I'm claiming it. But basically I have like a lighting system. So green means add weight, orange means add a set. So green equals add reps or load, orange equals add a set, and red equals use the same weight and reps and sets as you did last week, or decrease the reps and sets. So basically, when I build in progression to my clients' programs, they have the ability to say, hey, this was really, really easy this week. This is for more beginners and intermediates. This is really, really easy. Green light for this. Let's add reps or load. Right. And then orange, cool. Maybe I couldn't add another rep or can't add weight, but I'll get another set in. And it's just a basic way to teach them, hey, we need to progress, and sometimes we can't progress. So that's something I've used that seems to be working quite well. But outside of that, I really don't use deloads anymore to the same degree that I used to. Like I used to plan them in and say, hey, you've got a deload. But I've realized through working with a lot of people that most often they don't need a deload. You can auto-regulate by dropping fatigue in a couple of sessions, and then they can continue training. It's obviously dependent on the context. Like if you've got a contest prep athlete, they're planned in. Powerlifters, they're planned in. But I think for a lot of just general lifters who are training 3 to 4 times a week, they're almost resting more than they're training. So I think
if anything, it's like a reactive regression for a single day or something.
Yes, correct. As opposed to having a complete deload when they're going to go on holidays in a week's time, or they're traveling for work and they're going to miss a week of training. So I think that's been something that I've used with some level of success. But apart from that, I think the biggest thing that I've realized over the years in working with people is that it doesn't need to be as complicated as what we think.
Absolutely.
And the more attention we pay to the client and their response to things, the better results we can get. And science is more often just that starting point to help us, get things going. And then we do really need to look at what's happening in real time. So there have been things that I guess I've used effectively with my clients. Yeah.
Well said. So there's a lot to unpack there, and if I was to summarize and just slap me around and change what I'm saying if I get it wrong, the initial assessment is incredibly important, more so than just like the PAR-Q health assessment and postural assessment that most personal trainers think of, because trainers often hang out with trainers. Like here at the UEBC conference, the entire room raised their hand when we asked who's a trainer or who wants to be working with someone. And I think a lot of the times trainers congregate together and they produce content and systems and share information that is relevant to other trainers. And sometimes they forget how siloed they become away from the general population. And they assume a certain level of knowledge, experience, or understanding that most clients actually simply don't have.
We forget what it's like to be beginner.
The average client doesn't know what a calorie or protein or carbohydrate is. And they don't know what sets and reps even are. And they don't know how to properly perform an exercise. So I think making sure that your clients are at the appropriate level of knowledge is incredibly important. And then once you're actually working with them, having systems is incredibly important. Because you will end up creating a system for each individual client, but if you're starting from nothing, that can be a very inefficient process.
It's very difficult to have any means of progression. You have no direction. If you have some basic systems, I think it gives you a logical framework to progress someone. And I think if progression is the end goal, that's always a good thing.
Absolutely. And then for some specific nutrition and training takeaways, it sounds like on the training side, for more Gen Pop or someone with general hypertrophy goals, not a competitive bodybuilder in the midst of prep or a powerlifter, having just reactive, easy days can be a very useful strategy so you don't have to take a fully planned deload. And on the nutrition side, it's actually something I've also done, is that in the off season when someone's trying to gain muscle mass, especially when they're a natural bodybuilder who's pretty advanced, it's going to happen so slow anyway that I focus much more on this incremental increase in calories. And I think that's a great application of it when someone's doing a cut outside of contest prep, because they're not getting incredibly lean. There's no reason you need to add body fat or jump them up to a high calorie intake to deal with diet fatigue. So that sounds like a really excellent application of the tool.
Awesome.
Well, that's all we have for this episode of AO, folks. That's Jacob Schepis. Definitely check him out. We'll have some links in the in the comment section of this video, because this is not an Instagram video. Obviously, it's really long. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Honored to be on.
See you guys next time.
Thank you.